Marcus Johnson dropped his mop and sprinted toward the dying woman. The crash cart had failed. Doctors were screaming. And this stranger, blonde hair matted with blood, designer clothes torn, had 30 seconds left before brain death. Marcus knew where the backup defibrillator was. He'd cleaned that storage closet an hour ago. He grabbed it. He saved her. And then he saw her face. Victoria Ashford. The CEO who destroyed his engineering career. The woman whose signature cost him his house, his wife, his dignity. He'd just given his enemy a second chance at life. But here's what Marcus didn't know yet. She was about to give him something he never expected in return. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. The fluorescent lights of Alexandria General Hospital buzzed with that particular hum Marcus Johnson had learned to ignore over 3 years of night shifts. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, the kind of cold October night where rain hammered the windows like it had a personal grudge against the glass. Marcus pushed his mop across the ER hallway, his shoulders aching from 7 hours of work with 5 more to go. His hands were calloused, his lower back screamed with every step, and his feet had gone numb somewhere around hour 4. But he kept moving. He always kept moving. At 38 years old, Marcus had learned that stopping meant thinking. And thinking meant remembering. And remembering meant feeling the weight of everything he'd lost. So he mopped. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out already, knowing who it was. "Daddy?" Maya's voice was sleepy. Small, 8 years old, and fighting to stay awake. "Hey, baby girl, why aren't you asleep? I wanted to hear your voice." Marcus leaned against his mop handle and closed his eyes. "I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm always right here. I left your lunch on the counter. I put a note inside." "What's it say?" "It's a secret. You have to read it tomorrow." Marcus smiled, his first real smile in hours. "I can't wait. Now get some sleep, okay, Mrs. Patterson is right next door if you need anything." "I know, Daddy. I love you." "I love you more, Maya. I love you most." He hung up and stared at the phone for a moment. The screensaver was a photo of Maya at her school's science fair, holding a third-place ribbon and grinning like she'd won the Nobel Prize. That ribbon was taped to their refrigerator now, right next to the shutoff notice from the electric company that Marcus had paid barely 2 days ago. He slid the phone back into his pocket and returned to mopping. The ER was quiet tonight. A few drunk college kids in the waiting room, an elderly man with chest pains in Bay 3, a teenager with a broken wrist from a skateboarding accident. Routine stuff. The kind of night where Marcus could disappear into the rhythm of his work and pretend just for a few hours that this was a life he'd chosen rather than a life he'd been sentenced to. Then the radio crackled. "Incoming trauma. ET. A 2 minutes. MV. A single vehicle. Female driver. Unresponsive at scene. Possible cardiac arrest." The ER exploded into motion. Nurses sprinted past Marcus, nearly knocking him into the wall. Dr. Reeves, the attending physician, burst through the double doors barking orders. Orderlies wheeled equipment into Trauma Bay 1. Marcus stepped back, pressing himself against the wall, making himself invisible the way janitors learned to do. His job was to stay out of the way, clean up after never be seen. But he watched. He always watched. The ambulance doors banged open. Paramedics rushed in, wheeling a gurney at full speed. On it lay a woman. Blonde hair tangled with glass fragments, blood streaking her temple, a cervical collar around her neck, her white blouse torn and stained crimson. "Female mid-30s car went through the guardrail on Riverside Bridge," the lead paramedic shouted. "Lost pulse at scene, got her back after 4 minutes of CPR, but she's crashing again." They pushed into Trauma Bay 1. Marcus couldn't see much through the glass, just a chaos of bodies and equipment and urgent voices. Then the crash cart alarm went off. Not a normal alarm, a failure alarm. "Defibrillators down," someone shouted. "What do you mean it's down?" "It's not charging. The battery's dead." "Where's the backup?" "There is no backup. Someone was supposed to..." Marcus's feet moved before his brain caught up. He knew where the backup was. He'd seen it 3 hours ago when he was cleaning the supply closet on the second floor. Room 247. Someone had left it there after a training session and never returned it to the ER. He didn't think. He just ran. Down the hall, through the stairwell door, up 2 flights, taking the steps 3 at a time. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. He was a 48-year-old man who spent 12 hours a day on his feet, not an athlete, not anymore. But Maya's face flashed in his mind. 8 years old, waiting at home, trusting him to come back. And somewhere downstairs, a woman was dying because a piece of equipment was in the wrong place. He burst through the second-floor door, sprinted to room 247, threw it open. There on the middle shelf, exactly where he remembered, sat the backup defibrillator. He grabbed it and ran. Back down the stairs, through the ER doors, past the nurse's station. "Hey, you can't." Marcus ignored the security guard and pushed into Trauma Bay 1. "I've got it," he shouted, holding up the defibrillator. "Room 247, second floor." Dr. Reeves looked up, startled. For a split second, Marcus saw the calculation in his eyes. Janitor out of place, breaking protocol. Then Dr. Reeves grabbed the defibrillator. "Charge to 200, everyone clear." Marcus stumbled backward out of the way as the team worked. He watched through the window, now his chest heaving, his uniform soaked with sweat. The woman's body jerked. Nothing. "Charge to 300, clear." Another jolt. The monitor flatlined for 1 eternal second. Then beep, beep, beep. "We've got a rhythm." Dr. Reeves exhaled hard. The team moved with renewed energy, stabilizing, intubating, working to keep the fragile pulse alive. Marcus leaned against the hallway wall, trying to catch his breath. His hands were shaking. Adrenaline, probably. Or maybe something else. "Hey." He looked up. Dr. Reeves had stepped out of the trauma bay, pulling off his bloody gloves. "That was you. You found the backup unit." Marcus nodded. "How'd you know where it was?" "I cleaned that room. I saw it earlier. Nobody had moved it back." Dr. Reeves studied him for a moment. "What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus Johnson." "Well, Marcus Johnson, you just saved that woman's life. If you hadn't gotten that defibrillator when you did..." He shook his head. 2 more minutes, and we would have lost her." Marcus didn't know what to say. In his old life, he'd been praised for his work, recognized for his contributions, respected by colleagues and supervisors. That was a long time ago. Now compliments felt foreign, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. "Just doing my job," he finally said. "Doctor?" Reeves clapped him on the shoulder. "No, you did a hell of a lot more than that. I'm going to make sure administration knows about this." He walked back into the trauma bay, leaving Marcus alone in the hallway. Marcus stood there for a long moment, his heart rate slowly returning to normal. Through the window, he could see the medical team working, monitors beeping steadily now, the crisis past. He should get back to work. The floor wasn't going to mop itself, and there were still 5 hours left in his shift. But something made him stay. Something made him look. The nurses had cleaned most of the blood from the woman's face now. Her blonde hair had been pushed back, revealing sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw. Even unconscious, even battered, there was something commanding about her features. Something familiar. Marcus frowned. He stepped closer to the glass. Where had he seen that face before? A nurse adjusted the woman's oxygen mask, and for just a moment, Marcus got a clear view. His blood turned to ice. He knew that face. He knew it from the business magazines that used to sit on his office desk. He knew it from the company newsletters he used to read over lunch. He knew it from the single worst day of his life, when he'd stared at a termination letter and seen that face smiling next to an article about rising stars in American industry. Victoria Ashford, CEO of Ashford Industries. The woman who had signed the letter that destroyed his career, revoked his engineering license, and set off a chain of events that cost him his house, his marriage, and every dream he'd ever had for his future. The woman he'd just saved. Marcus couldn't breathe. His hands gripped the window frame so hard his knuckles went white, his vision tunneled. The fluorescent lights seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, which was racing again, but not from exertion this time. 5 years. 5 years since that letter arrived with her electronic signature at the bottom. 5 years since security had escorted him out of the building he'd given a decade of his life to. 5 years since Denise had sat him down at their kitchen table. The kitchen in the house they'd lose 3 months later, and said the words that broke something inside him that would never fully heal. "I can't do this anymore, Marcus. I can't watch you destroy yourself." She'd left, taken half of what little they had, and Marcus had been left alone with a 4-year-old daughter who kept asking when Mommy was coming home. All because of the woman lying in that bed. All because Victoria Ashford had signed her name without reading, without caring, without thinking about the human being she was erasing from existence. And now Marcus had saved her life. He laughed. It came out strangled, bitter, nothing like humor. "Mr. Johnson!" He turned. A young nurse, Sandra, her name tag said, was looking at him with concern. "Are you all right? You look pale." "I'm fine." The words came automatically. "Just tired." "Dr. Reeves told me what you did. That was incredible. You should be proud." Proud. Marcus wanted to laugh again, but choked it down. "Do you know who she is?" he asked instead, nodding toward the trauma bay. "The patient." Sandra glanced through the window. The paramedics found her ID, Victoria Ashford, CEO of Ashford Industries. She lowered her voice. "Big deal, apparently. Hospital administrator already called. They're moving her to a private room as soon as she's stable. VIP treatment." Of course. VIP treatment. Because people like Victoria Ashford always got VIP treatment. They got private rooms and personal physicians and press releases about their miraculous survival. They got second chances handed to them on silver platters. People like Marcus Johnson got mops and minimum wage and shut-off notices. "Mr. Johnson, you sure you're okay?" "Yeah." Marcus forced his hands to unclench from the window frame. "Yeah, I'm fine. I should get back to work." He walked away before Sandra could ask any more questions. The mop was where he'd left it, propped against the wall near the nurse's station. He grabbed the handle and pushed it across the floor, falling back into rhythm, letting the mechanical motion carry him. But his mind wouldn't stop. 5 years ago, Marcus Johnson had been somebody. Lead safety engineer at Ashford Industries, responsible for quality assurance on aerospace fuel systems, military contracts, commercial aviation, cutting-edge technology. He'd worked his way up from nothing community college night school and engineering degree, earned one class at a time while working full-time. He'd been proud of that, proud of what he'd built, proud that his daughter would grow up seeing a father who'd beaten the odds. Then he discovered the memo. It was buried in a routine procurement update, a 2.3% reduction in the alloy composition of critical fuel line components. On paper, it looked like a minor cost-saving measure, $4.2 million, quarterly, a number that would make the board very happy. But Marcus had run the numbers. He'd done the stress calculations. And he'd realized that the change introduced a catastrophic failure risk under certain temperature and pressure conditions. Conditions that occurred regularly in military aircraft operating at high altitude. He'd written a report. 16 pages meticulously documented every calculation, triple-checked. He'd sent it to quality assurance, to legal, to the CFO's office, to the CEO herself. He'd followed every protocol, done everything right. And then 2 weeks later, a pressure valve failed during a stress test in the fabrication wing. No injuries, a miracle, but the incident triggered an internal investigation. Not into the faulty materials, into Marcus. The CFO, Damian Cross, had orchestrated everything. Fabricated evidence of unauthorized testing, buried Marcus's report, and when the termination letter came down, Victoria Ashford's signature was at the bottom. She probably never even read it. She probably never read any of them, the hundreds of letters she signed that decided people's fates, ended careers, destroyed families. To her, Marcus was just a name on paper. A line item. a problem to be solved. And now she was alive because he'd been too decent to let her die. The irony was so bitter, Marcus could taste it. He mopped the same section of floor 3 times before realizing what he was doing. He forced himself to move on, to keep working, to not think about the woman in the private room upstairs who would never know or care what her signature had cost him. At 4 a.m. his phone buzzed again. He almost didn't answer. But the number was local, and at 4 a.m. local numbers meant emergencies. Hello. Mr. Johnson. This is Dr. Reeves. I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're working, but I wanted to let you know that Ms. Ashford is awake. She's asking about the person who saved her life. Marcus's jaw tightened. Why? She wants to thank you personally. I told her it was a member of our custodial staff and she insisted. Room 412. I'm working. I already cleared it with your supervisor. Take 15 minutes. She seems like she really wants to express her gratitude. Gratitude. From Victoria Ashford. Marcus almost said no. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse to stay invisible, to mop his floors and collect his paycheck and go home to his daughter and forget this night ever happened. But something else stirred inside him. Something older and harder than instinct. He wanted her to see him. He wanted to stand in front of the woman who'd destroyed his life and look into her eyes. He wanted to know if she'd feel anything at all when she realized who he was. Probably not. People like Victoria Ashford didn't remember the people they crushed on their way to the top. But Marcus would remember. And maybe that was enough. All right, he said. I'll be there in 5 minutes. He hung up, set his mop against the wall, and walked toward the elevator. Room 412 was at the end of a quiet corridor guarded by a hospital security officer who checked Marcus's employee badge before letting him pass. The door was slightly ajar, soft light spilling into the hallway. Marcus stood outside for a long moment. He could still walk away. Go back to his mop, finish his shift, never speak of this again. Victoria Ashford would never know. She'd thank some anonymous hospital employee in a press release, make a donation to the ER, and move on with her charmed life. And Marcus would keep mopping floors. He pushed open the door. Victoria Ashford lay in the hospital bed, propped up by pillows, her face pale and bruised, a bandage wrapped around her head. Without her power suits and professional makeup, she looked smaller than he'd imagined. Fragile almost. But her eyes, sharp, intelligent, accustomed to command, locked onto him immediately. You're him. Her voice was hoarse, weakened. The one who found the defibrillator. Marcus stepped into the room. Yes, ma'am. The doctors told me what happened. The equipment failed and you ran to get the backup. You saved my life. I did what anyone would have done. No. She shook her head, slowly, wincing at the motion. Most people would have stayed out of the way, done their job, let the professionals handle it. She paused. But you ran. Marcus said nothing. Victoria studied him. There was something in her expression, curiosity maybe. The look of someone used to reading people, calculating their angles, determining their value. What's your name? She asked. Marcus Johnson. He watched her face carefully, waiting for recognition, waiting for even a flicker of memory. Nothing. Of course. His name was just another signature she'd stamped out 5 years ago. Why would she remember, well, Marcus Johnson? I owe you my life, and I don't take that lightly. She reached for something on her bedside table, a business card. I want you to call this number tomorrow. My assistant will set up a meeting. Whatever you want, a reward, a recommendation, a new job, I'll make it happen. She held out the card. Marcus didn't take it. You don't remember me, do you? Victoria's hand froze midair. I'm sorry. You don't remember. 5 years ago. Ashford Industries. Marcus's voice was steady, controlled, but something dangerous flickered beneath the surface. I was a lead engineer in your safety compliance division. I found a critical flaw in your fuel line manufacturing, a cost-cutting measure that introduced catastrophic failure risk. Victoria's face went pale, paler than it already was. I wrote a report, Marcus continued. Sent it up the chain, did everything by the book, and 2 weeks later I was terminated for safety violations I never committed. My engineering license was revoked. I lost my house. My wife left me." He paused. "And the termination letter, the one that ended my career, had your signature at the bottom." The silence in the room was absolute. Victoria's hand lowered slowly, the business card forgotten. Her voice cracked. "I don't—" "You don't remember." It wasn't a question. "There were so many. The volume of—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "I signed what my department heads recommended. I trusted the system." "The system." Marcus let the word hang in the air. "The system that let your CFO commit fraud. The system that buried my report. The system that decided my career was worth less than $4 million in quarterly savings." Victoria's eyes had changed. The sharpness was still there, but something else had crept in. Something that looked almost like horror. "I didn't know," she whispered. "No, you didn't, because you didn't look." Marcus stepped closer to the bed. "You signed a piece of paper and erased my entire life, and you didn't even look at what you were signing." He was close enough now to see the tears forming in her eyes, to see the slight tremor in her hands as they gripped the hospital sheets. "I'm sorry." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry." 5 years ago that might have meant something. Marcus turned toward the door. "Tonight I saved your life because that's what decent people do. We help, even when it hurts. Even when every part of us wants to walk away." He paused at the doorway, one hand on the frame. "You get to live, Ms. Ashford. You get a second chance. And I really hope you do something better with it than you did with your first one." He walked out and closed the door behind him. The hallway was empty, silent except for the distant beeping of monitors and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Marcus stood there for a long moment, breathing slowly, waiting for the anger to subside. It didn't. It never really did. But he'd learned to carry it the way you learn to carry any weight that won't go away. He pulled out his phone and looked at Maya's picture again. His daughter. His reason. His everything. In 6 hours he'd go home. He'd eat the sandwich she'd made him read, the secret note she'd hidden inside, and kiss her forehead before she left for school. And then he'd sleep for 4 hours before waking up to do it all again. That was his life now. And no confrontation with Victoria Ashford, no moment of bitter satisfaction, would change that. Marcus put his phone away and walked back to his mop. He had work to do. Marcus didn't sleep when he got home that morning. He stood in the doorway of Maya's bedroom and watched her for a long time. Her small body curled under the purple comforter, her breathing soft and steady. The early morning light crept through the thin curtains and painted golden stripes across her face. She looked so peaceful, so unaware of how close they always were to losing everything. Marcus finally pulled himself away and walked to the kitchen. The sandwich she'd made sat on the counter, wrapped in plastic, a folded piece of paper tucked underneath. He opened the note. "Dear Daddy, you are the strongest person I know. Even when things are hard, you never give up. That's why you're my hero. Love, Maya. P.S. I put extra pickles because I know you like them." Marcus sat down heavily at the kitchen table and pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. He didn't cry. He'd stopped crying years ago, somewhere between the foreclosure notice and the divorce papers. But something inside his chest cracked open just a little, the way it always did when Maya reminded him why he kept going. She didn't know. She had no idea that her father used to wear suits to work, used to have an office with a window, used to earn enough money that extra pickles wasn't a luxury they had to think twice about. She didn't know about Victoria Ashford, about the letter, about any of it. And Marcus intended to keep it that way. He ate the sandwich slowly, tasting the love in every bite, and then he lay down on the couch and stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally pulled him under. The dreams came as they always did. 5 years ago, Marcus Johnson had been a different man. He remembered the weight of his badge as he walked through the security checkpoint at Ashford Industries each morning. Employee ID 4471, Lead Safety Engineer, Aerospace Division. 10 years with the company, worked his way up from junior technician, earned every promotion through late nights and perfect reports, and a reputation for catching problems before they became catastrophes. His office was on the fourth-floor corner unit with a window that overlooked the fabrication plant. He'd earned that window. Every morning he'd stand there with his coffee and watch the workers below, knowing that his calculations, his inspections, his attention to detail kept them safe. That was the job. That was his purpose, making sure people came home to their families at the end of the day. Denise used to joke about it. "You care more about those stress tests than you do about me," she'd say, but she was smiling when she said it, proud of the man she'd married, proud of what he'd built. They had a house then. 3 bedrooms in a good school district, a backyard where Maya learned to ride her bike, a garage where Marcus kept his tools organized with military precision. They had a retirement account and a college fund and plans for a vacation to Disney World the following summer. They had a life. And then Marcus found the memo. It was buried in a routine procurement update, the kind of document that crossed his desk a dozen times a week. Most engineers skimmed them, trusted that someone else had done the due diligence. But Marcus read everything. That was who he was. The memo outlined a change to the alloy composition in Series 7 fuel line components. A 2.3% reduction in tensile strength approved by the CFO's office, projected to save $4.2 million per quarter. On paper, it looked minor. A rounding error. The kind of optimization that made quarterly reports look impressive without anyone getting hurt. But Marcus ran the numbers. He pulled the original specifications. He calculated the stress tolerances. He modeled the failure scenarios. And at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night, sitting alone in his office, he realized what he was looking at. The modified alloy would fail under sustained high-temperature, high-pressure conditions. The exact conditions experienced by military aircraft fuel systems during extended high-altitude operations. Not immediately. Not every time. But often enough that statistically, it was only a matter of time before a pilot died. Marcus's hands were shaking when he finished the analysis. He spent the next week building his case. 16 pages of documentation, every calculation triple-checked, every conclusion supported by data. He followed protocol, exactly submitted the report to quality assurance, copied legal, sent a summary to the CFO's office and the CEO directly. He did everything right. 3 days later, Damian Cross called him into a meeting. Marcus had only met the CFO once before at a company town hall. Cross was the kind of man who wore suits that cost more than Marcus's monthly mortgage payment and smiled like a shark sizing up its prey. "Marcus," Cross said, gesturing to a chair across from his mahogany desk. "Thanks for coming up. Please sit." Marcus sat. "I received your report," Cross continued. "Very thorough, very detailed. You clearly put a lot of work into it." "The risk is real," Marcus said. "The modified alloy doesn't meet safety specifications. If we continue production..." "If we continue production," Cross interrupted smoothly, "we save $16.8 million annually. Do you know what that number means for our stock price, for our contracts with the Department of Defense? I know what a fuel line failure means for the pilot flying the aircraft." Cross's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "The engineering tolerances are within acceptable limits. We've had 3 independent consultants review the specifications. Those consultants didn't see my analysis. They didn't model the failure scenarios. Your analysis is based on theoretical projections, not empirical data." Cross leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "I appreciate your diligence, Marcus. I really do. But this decision has already been made at the highest levels. Your concerns have been noted and addressed." "Addressed how?" "The appropriate redundancy protocols have been implemented. This conversation is over." Marcus stood up slowly. "I'm going to document this meeting. For the record." Cross's smile finally faded. "You can document whatever you want, but I'd recommend focusing on your actual job responsibilities from now on. The company has a lot invested in you, Marcus. It would be a shame to see that investment go to waste. It was a threat. They both knew it. Marcus walked out of that office knowing that he'd made an enemy. But he also knew he was right. And he believed naively he realized later that being right would be enough. 2 weeks later, the pressure valve failed. It happened during a routine stress test in Fabrication Wing C. Marcus was in his office when the alarm sounded that high keening wail that meant something had gone seriously wrong. He ran. By the time he reached the wing, the emergency response team had already contained the situation. A pressure valve had ruptured, sending a jet of superheated fluid across the testing area. The emergency shutoffs had kicked in. No one was hurt. A miracle. A warning. Marcus examined the failed valve himself. The fracture pattern was exactly what his analysis had predicted. The modified alloy had given way under conditions that the original specification would have handled easily. He photographed everything, documented the incident, prepared to submit his findings as evidence that the cost-cutting measure was dangerous and needed to be reversed. He never got the chance. The following Friday, Marcus was called to Human Resources. The HR director was a thin woman with wire-rimmed glasses who wouldn't meet his eyes. Next to her sat a man Marcus didn't recognize later. He'd learned the man was from the company's legal department. Mr. Johnson. The HR director began sliding a folder across the table. We've completed our investigation into the incident in Fabrication Wing C. Marcus frowned. I wasn't aware there was an investigation. I've been preparing my own. The investigation. The legal representative cut in, has determined that the valve failure was caused by unauthorized stress testing conducted outside of approved protocols. That's not testing that was ordered by you, Mr. Johnson. Marcus stared at them. I never ordered any unauthorized testing. I've been documenting a legitimate safety concern. We have records. The HR director pulled papers from the folder. Work orders with your signature, emails from your account, testimony from technicians who say you instructed them to run tests outside normal parameters. That's a lie. Mr. Johnson. That is a lie. Marcus's voice rose. Someone fabricated those documents. I would never. The legal representative held up his hand. The evidence has been reviewed by multiple departments. The findings are conclusive. He slid another paper across the table. Your employment is terminated effective immediately, and we'll be referring this matter to the State Licensing Board for review. Marcus's vision blurred. You can't do this. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You have 30 minutes to vacate the premises. I want to talk to Victoria Ashford. The HR director finally looked at him. That won't be possible. She signed off on this. She approved my termination. Silence. Answer me. The legal representative gathered his papers. All executive terminations require CEO approval. Ms. Ashford has been briefed on the situation and concurs with the decision. He stood. This meeting is over. Marcus sat frozen in his chair as they walked out. He didn't remember the security escort. Didn't remember packing the photos from his desk, the award plaques from his walls, the coffee mug Maya had painted for him at summer camp. Didn't remember walking through the lobby where he'd worked for 10 years past colleagues who wouldn't meet his eyes out the front door into a world that no longer made sense. He remembered sitting in his car in the parking lot staring at the termination letter. At the bottom, in digital blue ink, was the signature, Victoria Ashford, Chief Executive Officer. Marcus didn't go home. He couldn't face Denise yet, couldn't find the words to explain how their entire life had just collapsed. Instead, he drove to a bar he'd never been to before and ordered whiskey he couldn't afford, and sat in a dark corner trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The lawsuits started the following week. Ashford Industries claimed damages alleged that Marcus's unauthorized testing had caused the valve failure and cost the company $2.3 million in repairs and delays. They froze his pension, garnished his final paycheck, hired lawyers who sent letters demanding compensation he didn't have. His engineering license was suspended pending investigation. No license meant no job, not in his field, not anywhere that mattered. Marcus hired a lawyer with money he borrowed from his mother. The lawyer reviewed the fabricated evidence and shook his head. "They built this case carefully," he said. "Without the original documents, your actual report, the memos you sent, it's your word against theirs." "I have copies. I saved everything. Let me see them." But when Marcus checked his home computer, the files were gone. Deleted remotely, he'd been using the company cloud backup, and they'd wiped it clean. The physical copies he'd kept in his office had been confiscated when he was terminated. His evidence had been erased. "I'm sorry," the lawyer said. "Without documentation, we're looking at a long, expensive fight with no guarantee of success. If you want my honest advice, don't. Marcus, don't tell me to settle. Don't tell me to accept what they did." The lawyer sighed. "Then we fight. But you need to understand what that means. This could take years, and Ashford Industries has resources you can't match." Marcus understood. He fought anyway. He liquidated his retirement account to pay legal fees. He took out a second mortgage on the house. He spent nights poring over documents, searching for anything that might prove his innocence. Denise watched it all with growing despair. "You need to stop," she told him one night, standing in the doorway of his home office where he'd been working for 14 hours straight. "You're destroying yourself." "They framed me, Denise. They destroyed my career to cover up their fraud. I can't just—" "You can. You have to." Her voice cracked. "Look at us. We're drowning. We can't make the mortgage payment. Maya's asking why you're never home anymore. And for what? For justice that's never going to come. I was right. The evidence. The evidence is gone. They made sure of that. And every day you keep fighting, they take a little more from us." Tears streamed down her face. "I can't watch you do this anymore. I can't watch you choose revenge over your family." "This isn't revenge. This is the truth." Denise shook her head slowly. "I'm not sure you know the difference anymore." She left 6 weeks later. The divorce papers were civil, uncontested. They divided what little was left, which wasn't much by then. Denise got the furniture, the car that wasn't underwater on payments, and the freedom to start over somewhere else. Marcus got Maya. "I'll send child support when I can," Denise said, standing in the doorway with her suitcase not quite meeting his eyes. "And I'll call her. Every week. I promise." She kept the first promise sometimes. She broke the second almost immediately. 3 months later, they lost the house. Marcus stood in the empty living room, the foreclosure notice crumpled in his fist, and listened to the echo of nothing. Maya tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, where are we going to sleep tonight?" He knelt down and pulled her into his arms. "Somewhere safe, baby girl. Don't worry. Daddy's going to figure it out." "Are you crying?" "No." He wiped his face. "I just got something in my eye." "It's okay to be sad, Daddy. I'm sad too. But we still have each other, right?" "Yeah, baby." He held her tighter. "We still have each other." That night, they slept in a motel that charged by the week. The next morning, Marcus started looking for work. Without his engineering license, his options were limited. He applied everywhere: factories, warehouses, retail stores. Most places looked at his resume and saw overqualified. Others saw the gap in employment, the pending litigation, the stain that Ashford Industries had left on his record, and decided he wasn't worth the risk. Finally, a hospital across town offered him a position on the custodial staff, minimum wage, night shift. No questions asked. He took it. "A janitor," his mother said when he told her. "Marcus, you have 2 engineering degrees." "I have a daughter who needs to eat. There has to be something better." "There isn't." His voice was flat, exhausted. "Not right now. This is what I've got, and I'm grateful for it." His mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Your father would be proud of you." "Proud, Mama, I'm mopping floors." "Your father worked 3 jobs to put you through school. He came home with blisters on his hands and never complained once." And when someone asked what he did for a living, you know what he said? "What? I provide for my family." That's it. That's all. Because to your father, the job title didn't matter. The paycheck didn't matter. What mattered was that his children had food on the table and a roof over their heads. She paused. "You're doing the same thing, baby. Don't ever be ashamed of that." Marcus wasn't ashamed. Not exactly. But every night when he pushed his mop down hospital corridors, he felt the ghost of who he used to be walking beside him. 3 years passed. Marcus learned to survive, learned to budget down to the penny, to find deals at grocery stores to fix things himself instead of calling repair services. He picked up extra shifts when he could. He helped neighbors with odd jobs. He built a life out of scraps and determination, and slowly, painfully, he learned to let go of his anger. Not forget, never forget. But carry it differently, not as a fire that consumed him, but as a weight he'd learned to bear. Maya grew. She started school, made friends, discovered she loved science and art, and asking questions that Marcus couldn't always answer. She made him sandwiches and left notes in his lunchbox and never once complained about their small apartment or their tight budget. She called him her hero, and every time she said it, Marcus felt something crack and heal in his chest simultaneously. He'd lost everything else, but he still had her, and that had to be enough. Then came the night Victoria Ashford's car went through the guardrail on Riverside Bridge, and nothing was ever the same again. Marcus woke from his restless sleep to find the sun had shifted afternoon light filling the apartment. He checked the time, 3:47 p.m. Maya would be home from school soon. He showered, changed, and was making coffee when he heard her key in the lock. "Daddy?" She burst through the door and threw her arms around his waist. "Hey, baby girl. How was school?" "Good. We learned about volcanoes. Did you know that some of them can sleep for hundreds of years and then wake up? Mrs. Patterson says they're just waiting for the right moment." Marcus smiled. "That's pretty cool. Also, I made you something." She pulled a folded piece of construction paper from her backpack and handed it over with great ceremony. Marcus unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing stick figures labeled Daddy and Maya, holding hands in front of a house with a sun overhead. "That's our future house," Maya explained. "When we save up enough. See, I gave it a big yard so we can get a dog." Marcus's throat tightened. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. I love it." "Do you really?" "I really, really do." They were sitting at the kitchen table, Maya doing homework, while Marcus helped with multiplication, when the knock came. Marcus frowned. They didn't get visitors. Mrs. Patterson occasionally stopped by to check on Maya during his night shifts, but she always called first. "Stay here," he told Maya. He opened the door. Victoria Ashford stood in the hallway. She looked terrible, pale dark circles under her eyes, a bandage still visible at her temple. She was wearing simple clothes, no jewelry. Nothing like the polished executive he'd seen in photographs. Without the armor of her position, she looked almost ordinary, almost human. "Mr. Johnson," her voice was quiet. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need to talk to you. You need to leave. Please." The word came out cracked, desperate. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." "Daddy," Maya's voice came from behind him. "Who's at the door?" Marcus closed his eyes. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But when he opened them, Victoria Ashford was still there, and Maya was peering around his legs with curiosity. "Are you the lady from the hospital?" Maya asked. "The one Daddy saved." Victoria looked down at her, and something shifted in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or grief. "Yes," she said softly. "I am." Maya stepped forward, extending her hand formally the way Marcus had taught her. "I'm Maya Johnson. It's nice to meet you." Victoria knelt down and shook Maya's small hand with great seriousness. "It's nice to meet you too, Maya. You have a very brave father." "I know. He's my hero." Marcus watched Victoria's face crumble just for a second before she rebuilt it. 5 minutes, Marcus said finally. "Maya, go to your room and finish your homework. I'll be there in a little bit." "But Daddy?" "Please, baby." Maya gave Victoria one last curious look, then retreated down the hall. Her door closed with a soft click. Marcus and Victoria stood facing each other in the narrow doorway. "Say what you came to say." Victoria took a breath. "I spent the last 2 days pulling files. Personnel records, incident reports, internal memos, everything related to your termination." She paused. "You were right. About the fuel lines. About the risk. About all of it." "I know I was right. The evidence against you was fabricated. Damian Cross orchestrated everything. The fake work orders the deleted files, the testimony. He built the case from nothing and used my signature to make it official." "And you signed it without reading?" "Yes." Her voice broke. "I signed it without reading. I trusted a system that was designed to protect people like Cross and eliminate people like you. And I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life." Marcus said nothing. "I can't give you back what you lost," Victoria continued. "I know that. 5 years of your career, your marriage, your home, the life you built. I can't undo any of it. But I can try to make it right." "How?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I want to hire you as an independent safety consultant. 30 days full access to every file, every facility, every record at Ashford Industries. Whatever we find, good or bad, goes public." Marcus stared at her. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." Why would you blow up your own company?" Victoria met his eyes. "Because my father built Ashford Industries on integrity. He believed that doing the right thing and doing the profitable thing could be the same thing. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that. I let men like Damian Cross convince me that the numbers were all that mattered." She paused. "You reminded me of something important, Mr. Johnson. When that defibrillator failed and I was dying on that table, you ran. You didn't ask if I was worth saving. You just ran, because that's who you are, and I need to become someone worthy of that kind of grace." The silence stretched between them. Marcus thought about the last 5 years, the sleepless nights, the humiliation, the weight of carrying anger so long it had become part of him. He thought about Maya doing homework in the next room, trusting him to protect her from a world that had already taken so much. He thought about Victoria Ashford, not the signature on a letter, not the villain he'd built in his mind, but this broken woman standing in his doorway asking for a chance to make things right. "I have conditions," he said finally. Hope flickered across her face. "Name them." "Full transparency. No NDAs. No gag orders. Whatever we find, I present it myself. You don't interfere." "Agreed. And if I find evidence of criminal conduct, I go to the authorities. Not you, not your lawyers, me." Victoria nodded slowly. "Agreed. And you pay me enough to cover 6 months of rent and legal fees to get my license reinstated." "Done." Marcus studied her for a long moment. He didn't trust her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But trust wasn't what this was about. This was about truth. And for the first time in 5 years, someone with the power to uncover it was offering him the chance. "Monday," he said. "I'll meet you at the fabrication plant, 7 a.m. Thank you." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson." "Don't thank me yet. You might not like what I find." Victoria turned to leave, then paused. "Mr. Johnson, your daughter, what about her? She's lucky to have you." Marcus watched her walk down the hallway toward the elevator. When he closed the door, Maya was standing behind him, her homework forgotten. "Daddy, who was that lady?" Marcus knelt down to her level and took her hands in his. "Someone who made a big mistake a long time ago, and now she wants to fix it." "Are you going to help her?" Marcus thought about it. About justice. About second chances. About the man he wanted his daughter to see when she looked at him. "Yeah, baby," he said finally. "I think I am." Maya nodded solemnly. "That's good. That's what heroes do." She hugged him tight, and Marcus held on like she was the only solid thing in a world that had just shifted beneath his feet. Because maybe she was. Monday came faster than Marcus expected. He'd spent the weekend reviewing old notes he'd kept hidden in a shoebox, trying to remember details that 5 years had blurred, explaining to Maya that Daddy would be working different hours for a while. "Is it because of the lady who came to our house?" Maya had asked. "Partly." "Is she a bad person?" Marcus had thought about that for a long time before answering. "She made bad decisions, but I think she's trying to be better." "Then you should help her," Maya said simply. "Everyone deserves a chance to be better." 8 years old, and she understood Grace better than most adults Marcus had ever known. Now he stood outside the gates of Ashford Industries, staring at the building he hadn't entered in 5 years. His stomach churned. His palms were sweating. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, to walk away, to protect himself from whatever waited inside those walls. But he'd given his word, and Marcus Johnson kept his word. He walked through the security checkpoint, presented the visitor badge Victoria's assistant had arranged, and rode the elevator to the executive floor. Every face he passed triggered a jolt of recognition. Some he remembered, some he didn't. A few people stared. Word had clearly spread. The disgraced engineer was back. Victoria met him outside her office. She looked better than she had at his apartment. Some color had returned to her face, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her nerves. "Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming. Let's get something straight," Marcus said, keeping his voice low. "I'm not here for you. I'm not here for redemption or closure or whatever this is supposed to be. I'm here for the truth. The same truth I tried to tell 5 years ago." "I understand. Do you?" "Because when I find what I'm looking for, and I will find it, people are going to prison. Maybe people you care about. Maybe people who've been loyal to you for years." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I know. And you're still willing to let me dig." "I'm not just willing." She met his gaze steadily. "I'm counting on it." They started in the records room. Marcus had forgotten how much paper a company like Ashford Industries generated. Filing cabinets lined every wall, decades of documentation, organized by year and department. Digital files had replaced most of the physical records, but the old stuff remained: procurement orders, incident reports, personnel files, maintenance logs. Victoria had arranged for Marcus to have unrestricted access. No doors were locked. No files were off limits. "Where do you want to start?" she asked. "The beginning. Pull everything related to the Series 7 fuel line modification. Every memo, every email, every work order from 6 months before the change through 6 months after." It took 3 days just to gather the documents. Marcus worked methodically the way he'd always worked, creating timelines, cross-referencing dates, building a picture of what had happened piece by piece. Victoria watched, helped when he asked, stayed quiet when he didn't. On the 4th day, he found the first thread. "This procurement order," he said, spreading papers across the conference table. "It's dated 2 weeks before the alloy modification was approved. But look at the authorization code." Victoria leaned in. "What am I looking at?" "Every procurement order has a unique code tied to the authorizing department. This one shows approval from quality assurance." Marcus pointed to a second document. "But this internal memo from the same week shows QA flagging the modification for additional review. They hadn't approved anything yet." Someone changed the authorization. Someone bypassed the approval process entirely. They made it look like QA had signed off when the review was still pending. Victoria's face went pale. "Damien." "Maybe. But I need more than one falsified document to prove it." He kept digging. On day 6, Marcus requested access to the fabrication plant. Victoria arranged a tour, but when they arrived, the floor supervisor, a heavyset man named Patterson, who'd been with the company for 20 years, blocked the entrance. "I'm sorry, Ms. Ashford, but Mr. Cross gave explicit instructions. No unauthorized personnel in the fabrication wing." "I'm authorizing it," Victoria said. "With respect, ma'am, Mr. Cross said the order came from the board. Something about liability concerns during the safety audit." Marcus and Victoria exchanged a look. "What safety audit?" Victoria asked. Patterson shifted uncomfortably. "The one Mr. Cross announced yesterday said the board wanted an independent review of all fabrication procedures. No visitors until it's complete." "Patterson, I'm the CEO. I'm telling you to let us in. And I'm telling you what Mr. Cross said. If you want to override him, you'll need to take it up with the board." Victoria's hands clenched at her sides. For a moment, Marcus thought she might force the issue, pull rank, threaten Patterson's job, do whatever it took to get through that door. Instead, she turned and walked away. Marcus followed. "He knows," Victoria said once they were out of earshot. "Damien knows what we're doing." "Of course he knows. You don't think he has eyes everywhere? The moment you pulled my personnel file, red flags went up all over this building." "Then what do we do?" Marcus thought about it. "We go around him. The fabrication plant isn't the only place with evidence. I need access to the IT systems, specifically the version control logs for the procurement software." "Why?" "Because 5 years ago, the files that proved my innocence disappeared. Someone deleted them remotely, and whoever did it left a trail." Marcus paused. "They always leave a trail." Victoria made a call. An hour later, Marcus sat in a windowless room with a nervous IT technician named Kevin, who couldn't have been older than 25. "I need to see the commit history for the procurement authorization system," Marcus said. "Specifically, any changes made between January and April 5 years ago." Kevin's fingers hovered over the keyboard. That's archived data. I'd need to restore it from backup." "Then restore it. It could take a few hours." "I'll wait." Kevin worked. Marcus watched. And at 4:47 p.m., the screen filled with lines of code that made Marcus's heart stop. "There," he pointed. "That commit. March 15th. What does it do?" Kevin studied the code. "It's a macro. Looks like it automatically flags certain stress tests as optional if production volume falls below a threshold." "Optional, meaning they can be skipped." "Theoretically, yes, but why would anyone—" "Who authored that commit?" Kevin checked the log. His face went white. "Kevin, who authored it?" "Damien Cross." The name came out barely above a whisper. It was committed from his user account. Marcus sat back in his chair. 5 years. 5 years of doubt, of wondering if he'd missed something, of questioning whether his analysis had been wrong. 5 years of being called a liar, a fraud, a danger to the company he'd given a decade of his life to. And here it was. Proof, written in lines of code that Damien Cross had never bothered to delete because he'd assumed no one would ever look. "Can you print that?" Marcus asked. I don't know if I should." "Mr. Cross." "Kevin." Marcus leaned forward. "That piece of code you're looking at, it's designed to bypass safety checks on fuel systems that go into military aircraft. Systems that keep pilots alive. Damien Cross wrote it to save money, and when I tried to stop him, he destroyed my career." He paused. "Print it." Kevin printed it. Marcus was walking back to the conference room with the evidence in his hands when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed a janitor." He stopped in the middle of the hallway. A second text arrived. "Check on your daughter." Marcus's blood turned to ice. He was dialing Maya's school before his brain fully processed what he was reading. "Jefferson Elementary. How may I help you?" "This is Marcus Johnson. My daughter Maya is in Mrs. Patterson's 3rd grade class. I need to speak with her immediately." "Mr. Johnson's school ended an hour ago. Maya was picked up by—" "By who? I didn't authorize anyone to pick her up." "Sir, according to our records, you called this morning and added an emergency contact. A Mrs. Denise Johnson." The phone nearly slipped from Marcus's hand. Denise? His ex-wife, who hadn't seen Maya in over a year, who had no legal custody, who wouldn't have known to pick Maya up unless someone told her. "Where did they go?" "I'm sorry, sir, I don't have that information." "Is there a problem?" "Should I call?" Marcus hung up and ran. He was in his car and driving before he could think. His hands shook on the wheel. His mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Damian Cross had threatened his daughter. Damian Cross had used his ex-wife to get to Maya. And Marcus had no idea where they were. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He answered. "If you touch my daughter..." "Relax." Damian Cross's voice was smooth, casual, the same voice Marcus remembered from that meeting 5 years ago. "Maya is perfectly safe. She's having ice cream with her mother. They're catching up. It's actually quite touching." "What do you want?" "I want you to stop. Walk away from Ashford Industries. Forget what you found. Go back to mopping floors and pretend this never happened. And if I don't, then things get complicated. For you, for Maya, for everyone involved." Cross paused. "I'm not a monster, Marcus. I don't want to hurt anyone. But you're backing me into a corner, and cornered animals do desperate things. You framed me. You destroyed my career. I protected the company. I made difficult decisions for the greater good. That's what leaders do." Cross's voice hardened. "You were a liability, a whistleblower who couldn't see the big picture. I removed you the same way I'd remove any malfunctioning component. I was right. The fuel lines were within acceptable risk tolerances. No one died. No planes crashed. The system worked. The system worked because I caught it before. The system worked because I managed it. Because I made the calls you were too weak to make." Cross exhaled. "Listen to me carefully. You have two choices. Walk away, now take your daughter home, and I'll make sure you never hear from me again. Or keep pushing, and I will bury you so deep that what happened 5 years ago will look like a promotion." Marcus gripped the steering wheel. "Where's my daughter?" "Riverside Park, the ice cream stand near the fountain. But Marcus, this offer expires the moment you hang up this phone. Choose wisely." The line went dead. Marcus drove to Riverside Park in 8 minutes flat. He spotted them immediately. Maya sitting on a bench with Denise, an ice cream cone in her hand, her face confused but not frightened. Denise looked up as Marcus approached, and something like guilt flickered across her features. "Daddy?" Maya jumped off the bench and ran to him. Marcus swept her into his arms and held her so tight she squeaked. "You're squishing me." "Sorry, baby, I just missed you. Mommy came to get me from school. She said you called and said it was okay." Marcus looked at Denise over Maya's head. His ex-wife stood slowly wrapping her arms around herself. "Marcus, I can explain." "Maya, go wait in the car. I need to talk to your mother." "But..." "Now please." Maya hesitated, looked between her parents, then walked reluctantly toward the parking lot. Marcus waited until she was out of earshot. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "He called me." Denise's voice was defensive, but there was fear underneath it. "Damian Cross. He said you were in trouble, that Maya might be in danger, that I needed to pick her up and keep her safe until..." "Until what?" "Until I backed off. Until he could use my daughter as leverage. I didn't know. He said he was trying to help." "Help!" Marcus stepped closer, his voice shaking with fury. "You handed our daughter to a man who threatened to bury me. You let a stranger use her as a bargaining chip." "He's not a stranger to me." Denise's eyes dropped. What?" The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You know him. You know Damian Cross." "It was after we separated. I was struggling and he reached out. He said he felt bad about what happened to you, wanted to make it right. He offered me a job at a consulting firm he owns. The pay was good. I didn't ask questions." "Argentum Consulting." Denise's silence was answer enough. "Jesus Christ, Denise. He's been paying you for 3 years to do what? Keep tabs on me. Report back on Maya." "It wasn't like that. I needed the money. And he never asked me to do anything until today." "Until today? Until he needed to threaten my daughter to shut me up." Denise started crying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "Get out of here. Marcus, get out of here before I say something I can't take back." Denise wiped her eyes, grabbed her purse, and walked away without looking back. Marcus stood alone in the park, his heart pounding, his mind racing. Damian Cross had been playing a longer game than Marcus ever imagined. He hadn't just framed Marcus, he'd built an entire infrastructure of control. Shell companies, paid informants, surveillance networks that reached into Marcus's own family. And now Cross knew exactly what Marcus had found. The evidence, the code, the proof that could bring everything crashing down. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Victoria. "We have a problem." He told her everything, the threats, Maya Denise Argentum Consulting. Victoria listened in silence. "Where are you now?" she asked when he finished. "Riverside Park. Maya's in the car." "Bring her to my house, both of you. You shouldn't be alone tonight. Your house. I have security, a gated property. If Damian wants to make another move, he'll have to go through layers of protection to do it." She paused. "Please, Marcus, let me help." Marcus looked toward the car where Maya sat watching him through the window. "Text me the address." Victoria's home was nothing like Marcus expected. He'd imagined a mansion, cold marble, expensive art, the kind of sterile luxury that rich people surrounded themselves with. Instead, he found a modest colonial on a quiet street, well-maintained, but not ostentatious, with a wraparound porch and flowers in the window boxes. Victoria met them at the door. "Maya, right?" She crouched down to the girl's level. "I'm Victoria. We met at your apartment." Maya studied her seriously. "You're the lady my daddy saved." "That's right. Are you the reason someone took me from school today?" Victoria's face tightened. "Yes, and I'm very sorry about that. A bad man did a bad thing because he's scared of what your daddy and I are doing together." "What are you doing?" "We're trying to tell the truth. And sometimes when people have big secrets, they get scared when someone wants to expose them." Maya nodded slowly. "My daddy always says that telling the truth is hard, but lying is harder." Victoria looked up at Marcus. Something passed between them. Respect, maybe. Understanding. "Your daddy is a very wise man." They went inside. Victoria showed Maya to a guest room with a TV, got her set up with snacks and cartoons, then led Marcus to her study. "We need to talk about what happens next." Marcus handed her the printout from IT. "This is the evidence. Damian's code, his digital signature, proof that he deliberately bypassed safety protocols." Victoria read through it, her face growing darker with each page. "This is enough," she said finally. "This is enough to take to the board, to the authorities." "It's not enough." Marcus shook his head. "Cross knows I found it. By tomorrow that code will be deleted. Kevin will be fired or bought off, and every trace of evidence will vanish. Again. Then what do? We move faster than he does. We document everything tonight, make copies, store them somewhere Cross can't reach. And tomorrow we hit the fabrication plant. Whatever he's hiding there, we find it before he can clean it up. He's blocked access. Patterson won't let us in. Then we go around Patterson. There has to be another way." Victoria thought for a moment. Then she picked up her phone. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll tell them I've uncovered evidence of financial fraud and safety violations at the executive level." She met Marcus's eyes. "Once the board is involved, Damian can't stop us without exposing himself. He could still run. Let him try. I've already contacted a federal attorney I trust. If Damian leaves the country, he'll be walking into an investigation that will follow him wherever he goes." Marcus studied her. "You've been thinking about this." "I've been thinking about nothing else since you walked out of my hospital room." Victoria set down her phone. 5 years ago, I failed you. I signed a piece of paper without reading it and let a good man's life get destroyed. I can't undo that, but I can make sure it never happens again. Why do you care so much? Because my father built this company on integrity, and somewhere along the way, I forgot what that meant." She paused. "You reminded me." They worked through the night. By 3 a.m., they had copies of every critical document stored on 3 separate hard drives, one of which Victoria locked in a safe at her attorney's office. They'd built a timeline of Damian's fraud going back 7 years. documented the shell companies traced the money and assembled a case that would be almost impossible to refute. At 6 a.m., Marcus checked on Maya, who was sleeping peacefully in the guest room. At 7 a.m., Victoria got a call. Her face went white as she listened. "What is it?" Marcus asked when she hung up. "There's been an accident at the fabrication plant. A fire in Wing C. 3 workers injured." Marcus's stomach dropped. Cross. "He's destroying evidence. Whatever's in that wing, he's making sure we never find it." "Then we go now." "The fire department hasn't cleared the building." "I don't care. If there's anything left to find, we have to get there before he finishes burning it." Victoria hesitated for only a moment. "Let's go." They arrived at the fabrication plant to find chaos. Fire trucks lined the entrance. Smoke billowed from Wing C. Workers stood in clusters, some being treated by paramedics, others just staring in shock. Marcus spotted Patterson near the security gate. "What happened?" Patterson's face was ashen. "Fire started around 4 a.m. Electrical, they think. Spread fast. We got everyone out, but 3 guys are on their way to the hospital." Electrical. Marcus didn't believe it for a second. "Mr. Johnson." Patterson grabbed his arm. "I heard what Cross did to you 5 years ago. I didn't know none of us knew, but if you're really trying to bring him down." He pressed something into Marcus's hand. "Maintenance entrance, south side. Fire didn't reach there yet." Marcus looked at the keycard Patterson had given him. "Why?" "Because I've been working here for 20 years, and I'm tired of being afraid." Marcus nodded once, then turned to Victoria. "Stay here. Call your board members. Make sure that meeting happens no matter what." "Where are you going?" "To find whatever Cross is trying to hide." He didn't wait for her response. The maintenance entrance was exactly where Patterson said it would be. Marcus swiped the keycard and slipped inside. The building was dark, emergency lights casting red shadows along the corridors. Smoke hung in the air, acrid and thick, but the fire hadn't spread this far. Yet. Marcus moved quickly, navigating from memory, heading toward the quality control archive where physical inspection records were stored. He found the door, swiped the card, stepped inside, and froze. Damian Cross stood in the center of the room, a can of gasoline in one hand and a lighter in the other. Around him, filing cabinets stood, open papers scattered across the floor. "Marcus!" Cross's voice was calm, almost amused. "I was wondering if you'd show up." "Put the lighter down, Damian." "Or what you'll call the police," Cross laughed. "By the time they get here, there won't be anything left to find. 5 years of evidence gone, just like before." "It won't matter. We already have the code. Your digital signature, the shell company records. You have copies. Copies can be discredited. But this..." Cross gestured at the papers around him. "These are original inspection reports, test results, the proof that I knew exactly what I was doing when I cut those corners." He shook his head. "I can't let you have this, Marcus. Surely you understand. 3 people are in the hospital because of you. Collateral damage. Regrettable, but necessary." Cross's eyes hardened. "You should have walked away when you had the chance. You should have taken your daughter and disappeared. But you just couldn't let it go, could you? You had to be the hero." "I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm trying to tell the truth." "The truth." Cross spat the word. "The truth is that people like you don't matter. You're a cog in a machine that runs on money and power. You can be replaced, discarded, forgotten. The machine keeps running no matter what." "Then why are you so scared?" Cross's face twisted. "I'm not scared. I'm practical. I'm doing what has to be done." "You're destroying evidence because you know you're guilty. You're threatening children because you're desperate. And you're standing in a room full of gasoline because you've run out of options." Marcus took a step forward. "That's not practical. That's pathetic." Cross raised the lighter. "One more step and I burn it all. You me everything." "Then do it." Cross hesitated. "You won't," Marcus said. Because despite everything, you still think you can get out of this. You still think your money and your connections and your lawyers can save you. You're not ready to die for your secrets. You don't know anything about me. I know you're a coward. I know you hide behind other people's signatures and blame other people for your failures. I know you've never taken responsibility for a single thing in your entire life. Marcus's voice was steady. And I know that in about 30 seconds the fire department is going to breach that door and find you standing here with a can of gasoline. As if on cue, sirens wailed outside. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. Cross's hand trembled. It's over, Damien. Put the lighter down. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Cross dropped the lighter. It clattered to the floor harmless, and Cross sank to his knees. You've ruined me, he whispered. Everything I built. You ruined yourself. I just found the receipts. The door burst open. Firefighters flooded in, followed by police. Someone grabbed Cross and hauled him to his feet. Someone else wrapped a blanket around Marcus's shoulders and led him outside. The sun was rising over Alexandria, and for the first time in 5 years, Marcus Johnson felt like he could breathe. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Marcus sat in an interview room for 3 hours, answering questions from detectives who seemed genuinely shocked by what they were uncovering. He told them everything. The falsified reports, the fabricated evidence, the code that Damien Cross had written to bypass safety protocols, the shell companies, the threats against Maya. When he finished, the lead detective, a tired-looking woman named Rodriguez, leaned back in her chair and exhaled. You're telling me this guy ran a fraud operation inside one of the biggest aerospace companies in the country for 7 years and no one noticed? People noticed, Marcus said. I noticed. But when you control the system, you can silence anyone who speaks up. And Ms. Ashford, the CEO, she had no idea. She signed what her people told her to sign. Trusted advisors who were lying to her face. Marcus paused. She's not innocent, but she's not the villain either. Rodriguez studied him. Most people in your position would want to see her burn too. Most people in my position haven't had to rebuild their life from nothing. You learn pretty quick that anger doesn't pay the bills or tuck your daughter into bed at night. The detective nodded slowly. We're going to need you to testify when this goes to trial. I'll be there. And Marcus. Rodriguez's voice softened slightly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. What they did to you, it wasn't right. No. Marcus agreed. It wasn't. He walked out of the police station at 2:47 p.m. to find Victoria waiting on the front steps. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her clothes wrinkled from the long night. But there was something different in her posture. Something that hadn't been there before. She looked lighter. The board meeting happened, she said as Marcus approached. I told them everything. Showed them the evidence. 3 members resigned on the spot. They were connected to Damien's shell companies. The rest voted unanimously to cooperate with the federal investigation. And Cross, being processed now. They're charging him with fraud, embezzlement, evidence tampering, and arson. The FBI is talking about adding racketeering charges once they finish tracing the money. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. It's really over. The investigation is just beginning, but yes. Victoria met his eyes. His part in it is over. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 people who'd been on opposite sides of something terrible now standing on the same ground. Where's Maya? Marcus asked. At my house. My housekeeper is with her. She's been worried about you. I should go to her. Of course. Victoria hesitated. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. I've never been anything else. I know. She took a breath. The press is going to want a statement. From both of us. The board wants to control the narrative, manage the fallout, protect what's left of the company's reputation. She paused. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to spin this or sanitize it or pretend it was anything less than what it was. What do you want to do? I want to tell the truth. All of it. I want to stand in front of cameras and say that I failed, that I signed documents without reading them, that a good man lost everything because I was too busy being CEO to be a leader. Her voice cracked. I want to apologize, publicly, and then I want to step down. Marcus stared at her. Step down. You just won. You exposed the corruption. I enabled it. For 5 years I enabled it. Victoria shook her head. The board wants me to stay. They think I can rebuild the company's image, restore confidence, lead us through the crisis. But how can I lead anyone when I couldn't even see what was happening under my own roof? So you're just going to walk away. I'm going to earn the right to come back. Someday. Maybe. She squared her shoulders. But first, I need to take responsibility. Real responsibility. Not the corporate kind where you issue a press release and hope everyone forgets. The kind where you actually change. Marcus studied her for a long moment. 5 years ago, he would have laughed at this, would have seen it as another rich person's performance, another empty gesture designed to generate good press and protect the bottom line. But something in Victoria's eyes told him this was different. She wasn't performing. She was reckoning. Okay, he said finally. Tell the truth. All of it. Will you stand with me when I make the announcement? Why? Because you're the proof that what I'm saying is real. Because people need to see that the person I wronged is willing to stand next to me while I take responsibility. She paused. And because I think it would help them trust that this company can actually change. Marcus thought about it. He thought about the 5 years of struggle, the humiliation, the nights he'd lain awake wondering if anyone would ever believe him. And he thought about Maya, who believed that everyone deserved a chance to be better. One condition, he said. Name it. When you tell the story, you tell all of it, not just the fraud, not just Damien. You tell them about me, my name, my report, what really happened. You make sure everyone knows that I was right. Victoria nodded. I was planning to. But Marcus, that means your name will be everywhere. Reporters, interviews, attention you might not want. I've spent 5 years being erased. I think I can handle being seen. The press conference was scheduled for the following morning. Marcus went home first to his real home, the cramped apartment where Maya was waiting with Mrs. Patterson from next door. Daddy! Maya launched herself at him the moment he walked through the door. Mrs. Patterson said you were helping the police catch a bad guy. Marcus hugged her tight. Something like that, baby. Did you catch him? We did. Are you a superhero now? Marcus laughed his first real laugh in days. No, sweetheart, I'm just your dad. That's better than a superhero, Maya said seriously. Superheroes have to save everyone. You just have to save me. Mrs. Patterson made dinner while Marcus showered and changed. He sat at the kitchen table with Maya helping her with homework, listening to her chatter about school and friends, and whether they could get a goldfish. Normal things, beautiful things, the kind of things he'd fought 5 years to protect. After Maya went to bed, Marcus sat alone in the living room and let himself feel it all. The relief, the exhaustion, the strange hollow sensation of reaching the end of a battle he'd been fighting so long he'd forgotten what peace felt like. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Press conference at 10 a.m. I'll send a car. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. He didn't respond, but he set his alarm for 7 o'clock and went to bed. The next morning, Marcus put on the only suit he still owned, a charcoal gray two-piece that Denise had bought him years ago for a job interview he'd never made it to. It was slightly too big now, loose in the shoulders, worn at the cuffs. But it was clean and pressed, and when he looked in the mirror, he saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. He saw an engineer. Maya helped him with his tie. You look handsome, Daddy. You think so? Like a movie star. She tilted her head. Why are you wearing your fancy clothes? I have to go talk to some people today. Important people. About the bad guy you caught. Yes, and about some other things too. Maya considered this. Will you tell them the truth? Always, baby, always. She hugged him. Good. The truth is important. The car Victoria sent was sleek and black, the kind of vehicle Marcus hadn't ridden in since his days at Ashford Industries. The driver was professional and silent, and Marcus spent the 30-minute ride staring out the window, watching the city scroll past. He thought about the first time he'd driven to Ashford Industries for his interview, 20 years old and hungry, a community college degree in his pocket, and a desperate need to prove himself. He'd been so nervous, his hands had shaken on the steering wheel. He thought about the day he'd gotten his first promotion, how he'd called his mother, crying with joy, how she'd told him his father would have been proud. He thought about the day he'd discovered the memo and the slow, sickening realization that the company he'd given his life to was rotten at its core. And he thought about now, today, the day he would finally be heard. The press conference was held in the main auditorium at Ashford Industries corporate headquarters. By the time Marcus arrived, the room was packed. Reporters, camera crews, board members, employees, shareholders. Everyone who mattered, and plenty who didn't. Victoria met him backstage. She was wearing a simple black dress, no jewelry, minimal makeup. She looked like someone preparing for a funeral rather than a press conference. Maybe that was appropriate. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Nervous," Marcus admitted. "I haven't spoken publicly ever really." "You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Just being there is enough." "No." Marcus shook his head. "I've been silent for 5 years. That's long enough." Victoria nodded. "Then let's do this." They walked onto the stage together. The murmur of the crowd died instantly. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust forward. Every eye in the room locked onto them, the CEO and the man she'd destroyed standing side by side. Victoria approached the podium. "Thank you all for coming." Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see the tremor in her hands. "I'm not going to read from a prepared statement. I'm not going to spin what happened, or minimize it, or explain it away. I'm going to tell you the truth, and then I'm going to take responsibility for it." The room was silent, waiting. 5 years ago, a man named Marcus Johnson worked for this company as a lead safety engineer. He was one of the best we had, dedicated, meticulous, principled. When he discovered that our CFO had implemented cost-cutting measures that introduced serious safety risks into our aerospace products, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He documented the problem, reported it through proper channels, and trusted that the system would work. Victoria paused. The system didn't work. Instead of addressing the safety concerns, our CFO Damian Cross fabricated evidence to frame Marcus for safety violations he never committed. He destroyed Marcus's documentation. He manipulated internal processes. And then he put a termination letter on my desk with a recommendation for immediate dismissal. She looked at Marcus. "I signed that letter. I didn't read the details. I didn't question the evidence. I trusted my team, and my trust was weaponized to destroy an innocent man." Her voice cracked. Marcus Johnson lost his career, lost his engineering license, lost his home, lost his marriage. He spent 5 years working as a janitor in this city, raising his daughter alone, while the company that wronged him continued to prosper. The murmuring started again. Reporters exchanged glances. Someone in the back started typing furiously. 3 weeks ago, Marcus was working the night shift at Alexandria General Hospital when I was brought in after a car accident. I was in cardiac arrest. The defibrillator failed, and Marcus Johnson, the man whose life I had ruined, ran through the hospital to find backup equipment and save my life. Victoria's voice broke completely now. Tears streamed down her face. "He didn't know who I was. He just knew someone was dying. And despite everything this company had done to him, everything I had done to him, he ran. Because that's who he is. A good man. A decent man. The kind of man this company should have protected instead of destroyed." She gripped the podium, steadying herself. "When I discovered the truth, when I realized what Damian Cross had done and what I had enabled, I asked Marcus to help me investigate, to expose the corruption, to bring the evidence to light. She paused. He had every reason to refuse, every reason to walk away and let this company burn. But he didn't. He chose truth over revenge, justice over anger. Victoria turned to face the cameras directly. Yesterday, with Marcus's help, we uncovered the full extent of Damien Cross's fraud. The falsified records, the embezzled funds, the deliberate safety violations that put lives at risk. The evidence has been turned over to federal authorities, and I expect criminal charges to be filed shortly. But I'm not here to talk about Damien Cross. I'm here to talk about responsibility. She took a breath. I failed. As a CEO, as a leader, as a human being, I built systems that prioritized efficiency over ethics. I trusted people who didn't deserve my trust. And I signed my name to documents that destroyed innocent lives without ever bothering to read them. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as CEO of Ashford Industries. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Board members exchanged shocked looks. Someone dropped a microphone. Victoria held up her hand. I'm not doing this to escape accountability. I'm doing this because accountability means more than issuing an apology. It means recognizing that I am not the right person to lead this company forward. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Before I leave this podium, I want to make two announcements. First, Ashford Industries is establishing the Marcus Johnson Integrity Fund, a $10 million endowment dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and ensuring that no one at this company, or any company we work with, ever loses their livelihood for telling the truth. Marcus's head snapped toward Victoria. She hadn't told him about this. Second, I am personally committing to covering all legal costs associated with reinstating Marcus Johnson's engineering license, compensating him for 5 years of lost income, and ensuring that his name is fully cleared in every database, every record, every file where it was wrongfully tarnished. Victoria turned to Marcus. Marcus, I know this doesn't fix what happened. Nothing can fix what happened, but I hope it's a start. She stepped back from the podium. The room was chaos. Reporters were screaming questions. Camera flashes created a strobe effect. Security guards were trying to maintain order. But Marcus barely noticed any of it. He walked to the podium. The room fell silent again. My name is Marcus Johnson. His voice was rough, unfamiliar with public speaking, but steady. 5 years ago, I discovered something that could have killed people if it wasn't fixed. I did everything right, followed every rule, every protocol, every chain of command. And I was destroyed for it. He gripped the podium the way Victoria had. For 5 years, I mopped floors. I cleaned toilets. I picked up extra shifts so my daughter could stay in a good school district. I ate ramen noodles for dinner so she could have real food. He paused. And every single day, I wondered if anyone would ever know the truth. I'm not standing here for revenge. I'm not standing here because I hate Victoria Ashford or Ashford Industries or anyone in this room. He looked at Victoria. I'm standing here because the truth matters. Because when good people stay silent, bad people win. And because my daughter is watching. His voice caught. Maya is 8 years old. She makes me sandwiches with extra pickles and leaves notes in my lunchbox that say I'm her hero. She doesn't know about any of this. The fraud, the cover-up, the years I spent wondering if I'd ever get our lives back. All she knows is that her daddy goes to work, comes home, and tries his best. I want her to grow up in a world where trying your best matters. Where telling the truth doesn't cost you everything. Where doing the right thing isn't a career-ending decision. He stepped back from the podium. That's all I have to say. The questions came like a flood. Mr. Johnson, will you be pursuing civil action against Ashford Industries? Ms. Ashford, who will replace you as CEO. Mr. Johnson, how do you feel about working with the woman who signed your termination letter? Ms. Ashford, do you expect criminal charges? Victoria and Marcus fielded what they could, deflected what they couldn't, and eventually retreated backstage while the PR team took over. In the quiet of the green room, Victoria sank into a chair. It's done, she said, for better or worse. Marcus sat down across from her. You didn't tell me about the fund, the compensation. Would you have accepted it if I'd asked first? Probably not. That's why I didn't ask. Victoria managed a tired smile. Marcus, you saved my life. Twice if you count the fabrication plant. And before that, you spent 5 years paying for a crime you didn't commit. The money doesn't make us even. Nothing makes us even. But it's what I can do. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Maya wants a goldfish, he said finally. What? She's been asking for a pet. Something small, easy to take care of. I keep telling her maybe next month, maybe after the next paycheck. He paused. I think I might be able to say yes now. Victoria's eyes filled with tears again. That's good, she said softly. That's really good. They sat in silence, two people who'd been broken by the same system, now trying to figure out what came next. The days after the press conference were a blur. Reporters camped outside Marcus's apartment building. His phone rang constantly with interview requests, job offers, book deals. Strangers on the street recognized him, stopped him to shake his hand, told him he was a hero. It was overwhelming, disorienting. Marcus had spent 5 years being invisible, and suddenly everyone could see him. But through it all, Maya kept him grounded. Daddy, why do people keep taking your picture? Because I did something that a lot of people think was brave. What did you do? I told the truth, even when it was hard. Maya considered this. Is telling the truth always hard? Sometimes, but it's always worth it. Then I'm going to tell the truth too. She nodded decisively. Even when it's hard. That's my girl. The engineering board reinstated Marcus's license within 2 weeks, the fastest reinstatement in state history. The letter of apology ran 3 pages and included a formal acknowledgement that the original charges had been fabricated. Marcus framed it. Not out of pride exactly, but as proof. Evidence that sometimes the truth did win. That 5 years of struggle hadn't been for nothing. The job offers kept coming. Engineering firms, aerospace companies, consulting agencies, everyone wanted the whistleblower who'd brought down Damian Cross. The salaries they quoted made Marcus's head spin. He turned them all down. Why? His mother asked when he told her. You could have everything you lost back. The house, the career, the life. I don't want that life back, Mama. I want a different one. What kind of different? Marcus thought about it. The kind where I help people like me. The ones who speak up and get silenced. The ones who tell the truth and get punished for it. He paused. Victoria offered me a position at the Integrity Fund, Director of Technical Oversight. I'd be reviewing safety reports, investigating complaints, making sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. And you'd be working with her, the woman who's trying to make it right. Yes. His mother was quiet for a long moment. Your father always said you had too much forgiveness in you. He thought it would get you hurt. She smiled. But I think it might just save you. Marcus accepted Victoria's offer the next day. 3 months later, the Ashford Industries Integrity Fund held its official launch event. Marcus stood at the podium, addressing a room full of industry leaders, safety advocates, and journalists. When I was a young engineer, he began, I believed that doing the right thing would always be rewarded. That if you worked hard, followed the rules, and told the truth, the system would protect you. He looked out at the crowd. I was wrong. The system isn't designed to protect truth-tellers. It's designed to protect the people with power. And when those people want to silence you, they have 100 ways to do it. But here's what I learned in 5 years of mopping floors and raising my daughter alone. They can take your job, your money, your reputation. They can take everything you built. But they can't take who you are. They can't take your integrity. This fund exists to protect the people who speak up, the engineers who report safety violations, the accountants who flag suspicious transactions, the workers who refuse to cut corners even when their bosses tell them to. He paused. Because those people, the truth-tellers, the whistleblowers, the ones who risk everything to do what's right, they're not just employees, they're heroes, and they deserve to be treated like it. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, Victoria found him near the refreshment table. Good speech, she said. I had a good teacher. Well, I don't think I taught you anything. I think you just finally got a platform. Marcus smiled. Maybe. They stood in comfortable silence watching the crowd mingle. "I got a letter from Damien's lawyers," Victoria said eventually. "He's trying to negotiate a plea deal, reduced charges in exchange for testimony about other executives involved in the fraud." "Will it work?" "The federal prosecutor seems interested, but either way, he's going to prison. The only question is, how long?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I thought I'd feel something when this happened. Satisfaction, justice, something. And I just feel tired, like I've been running a marathon and I finally crossed the finish line, but I'm too exhausted to celebrate." Victoria turned to face him. "That's normal. You've been carrying this for 5 years. It takes time to put it down." "Does it get easier?" "I don't know yet." She paused. "Ask me in 5 years." Marcus laughed a real laugh surprised out of him. "Deal." That night Marcus went home to Maya. She was waiting for him at the door holding a drawing she'd made at school. It showed 2 figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of a house with a yard and a dog and a sun that took up half the sky. "I updated it," she said proudly. "See, now we have a fence, and flowers, and the dog is named Biscuit." Marcus took the drawing carefully. "It's beautiful, baby. Do you think we'll really have a house like that someday?" Marcus looked at his daughter, her bright eyes, her hopeful face, her absolute faith that her father could make anything possible. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think we will." She hugged him tight, and Marcus held her standing in the doorway of their small apartment, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, the way they always had, the way they always would. 1 year passed. Marcus learned that healing wasn't a moment, it was a process. Some days he woke up feeling lighter than he had in years. Other days the old anger crept back a phantom limb that still ached even after the wound had closed. But more and more, the good days outnumbered the bad. The Integrity Fund grew faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months, they'd received over 300 reports from whistleblowers across a dozen industries. Engineers flagging safety violations. Accountants documenting fraud workers, reporting harassment that their companies had buried. Marcus reviewed every case, personally building teams of investigators and lawyers who could do what the system had failed to do for him: protect the truth-tellers. Victoria worked alongside him, though her role was different now. She'd enrolled in an EMT certification program, spending her weekends training at the same hospital where Marcus had once mopped floors. She said it grounded her, reminded her that leadership wasn't about signing documents, but about showing up when people needed you. Marcus suspected it was also penance, a way of paying forward what he'd given her. He didn't ask. Some things didn't need to be spoken. The trial of Damien Cross began in March. Marcus sat in the federal courthouse, 3 rows behind the prosecutor's table, watching the man who had destroyed his life answer for his crimes. Cross looked smaller now. His expensive suits couldn't hide the weight. He'd lost the gray that had crept into his hair, the hollow look in his eyes. Prison had a way of shrinking people. The prosecution called witness after witness. Engineers who'd been silenced. Accountants who'd been threatened. Workers who'd been fired for asking too many questions. Each testimony added another brick to the wall that would eventually bury Damien Cross forever. When they called Marcus to the stand, the courtroom went silent. "Mr. Johnson," the prosecutor began, "can you describe what happened when you discovered the safety violations at Ashford Industries?" Marcus told the story. The same story he'd told 100 times now, to investigators, to journalists, to rooms full of strangers who needed to hear that speaking up mattered. But this time was different. This time Damien Cross was watching. "I did everything right," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I documented the problem. I reported it through proper channels. I trusted that the system would work." He paused. "And the system failed, not because it was broken, but because men like Damien Cross had learned how to use it as a weapon." "Objection," Cross's lawyer said. "Characterization." "Sustained. Mr. Johnson, please stick to the facts." Marcus nodded. The facts are that I lost my career, my license, my home, and my marriage because I told the truth. The facts are that Damian Cross fabricated evidence to frame me for crimes I didn't commit. The facts are that for 5 years I mopped floors and raised my daughter alone, while the man who destroyed my life continued to profit from his fraud. He looked directly at Cross. Those are the facts. Cross's lawyer tried to discredit him during cross-examination. Suggested that Marcus had a grudge, that his testimony was motivated by revenge, that he'd collaborated with Victoria Ashford to manufacture evidence. Marcus didn't flinch. "I'm not here for revenge," he said calmly. "I'm here for the truth, the same truth I tried to tell 5 years ago when no one would listen." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts: fraud, embezzlement, evidence tampering, arson, reckless endangerment. The judge sentenced Damian Cross to 18 years in federal prison. Marcus watched them lead Cross away in handcuffs. He waited for the satisfaction to hit, the vindication, the triumph, the sense that justice had finally been served. Instead, he felt something quieter, simpler, relief. It was over. The man who had haunted his nightmares for 5 years was finally facing consequences, and Marcus could finally truly move on. He walked out of the courthouse into the spring sunshine and found Victoria waiting on the steps. "How do you feel?" she asked. Marcus thought about it. "Free." "That's good?" She smiled. "That's really good." They walked together in silence for a while, past the federal buildings and the busy streets, until they reached a small park with a fountain and benches and children playing. "I've been thinking," Victoria said eventually. About what comes next, for the fund, for me." She paused. "The board offered me my job back, CEO of Ashford Industries, effective immediately." Marcus stopped walking. "What did you tell them?" "I told them I needed time to think." Victoria sat down on a bench, and Marcus sat beside her. "A year ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Being CEO was my identity. It was everything I thought I wanted." "And now?" "Now I'm not sure." She watched the children playing, her expression thoughtful. "I spent a year learning how to save lives instead of signing papers. I spent a year working with you, seeing what it means to actually help people instead of just managing them." She paused. "I'm not sure I want to go back to who I was." "Then don't. It's not that simple." "Why not?" Victoria turned to face him. "Because I have a responsibility. To the company my father built. To the employees who depend on it. To the people who trusted me, even when I didn't deserve it." She paused. "And to you." "Me. The fund needs resources, legitimacy, access to the industries where whistleblowers are most vulnerable. If I'm CEO again, I can provide all of that. I can make sure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else at Ashford Industries or anywhere we do business." Marcus considered this. "So you'd take the job back to help the fund?" "I'd take the job back to do it right this time. To be the kind of leader my father was." She met his eyes. "The kind of leader you helped me remember how to be." They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of children laughing filling the space between them. "Maya's birthday is next week," Marcus said finally. Victoria blinked at the change of subject. "I know, she told me. Something about a goldfish. She's been asking for one for a year. I kept saying maybe next month, maybe after the next paycheck." He paused. "I bought her a whole aquarium, 20 gallons, the works." Victoria smiled. "She's going to love it." "I want you to come to the party." "Marcus, I know it's strange. I know we have history, but Maya likes you, and she doesn't have a lot of people in her life who—" He started again. "She needs people who show up, people who keep their promises, and you've been doing that." Victoria's eyes glistened. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Marcus stood up. "Saturday, 3 o'clock, our apartment. Bring a present if you want, but she'll be happy just to see you." He started walking away, then stopped. "Victoria." "Yes." "Take the job. Be CEO again. But do it right this time. He paused. I'll be watching. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Victoria nodded slowly. I know you will. Maya's 9th birthday party was small by most standards. Mrs. Patterson from next door, Marcus's mother, a few kids from Maya's class, and Victoria, who showed up with a gift-wrapped box and a nervous expression. Is it okay that I'm here? She asked Marcus quietly, while Maya tore through presents with her friends. Would I have invited you if it wasn't? I don't know. We have a complicated history. We do. Marcus handed her a piece of birthday cake. But Maya doesn't know about that, and I'd like to keep it that way. Victoria looked at the cake, then at Marcus. You never told her about what I did. She knows you made mistakes. She knows you're trying to be better. That's all she needs to know. He paused. Kids don't need the whole truth. They just need to see that people can change. Maya ran over, dragging Victoria by the hand toward the new aquarium in the corner. Miss Victoria, come see Daddy got me fish, real fish. This one is Bubbles, and this one is Sparkle, and this one is Captain Finn. Victoria let herself be pulled along, laughing at Maya's enthusiasm. Marcus watched them, his daughter so full of joy, and the woman who had once signed away his future, now kneeling beside a fish tank and listening intently to the naming logic of a 9-year-old. His mother appeared beside him. You're staring, she said. Just thinking. About her, about everything. Marcus took a breath. A year ago, I was mopping floors at Alexandria General, wondering if anyone would ever know the truth about what happened to me. Now I'm running a foundation that protects whistleblowers, my engineering license is restored, and my daughter is happy. He paused. It doesn't feel real sometimes. It's real. His mother squeezed his arm. You made it real. By refusing to give up. By choosing to be better instead of bitter. Dad would have said I was a fool, forgiving her. Your father would have been wrong, she smiled. He was wrong about a lot of things, God rest his soul. But he was right about one thing, you have too much heart for your own good. She paused. Turns out that's exactly what the world needed. After the party, after the guests had left, and Maya had been put to bed with Captain Finn's tank glowing softly in the corner of her room, Marcus sat on the couch with the remnants of cake and the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Thank you for today. It meant more than you know. He typed back. She asked if you'd come to her school play next month. I said I'd ask. The response came immediately. I'll be there. 3 months later, the Integrity Fund held its first annual conference. Engineers, safety officers, lawyers, and industry leaders gathered in a hotel ballroom to discuss whistleblower protection, corporate accountability, and the future of ethical business practices. It was the kind of event that would have seemed impossible a year ago, a room full of powerful people talking openly about the systems that had failed Marcus and so many others. Victoria gave the opening remarks as the newly reinstated CEO of Ashford Industries. A year ago, I stood in front of cameras and admitted that I had failed, she said. I signed documents without reading them. I trusted systems that were designed to hide the truth, and I enabled the destruction of a good man's career because I was too busy being CEO to be a leader. The room was silent. Today I stand before you as someone who's trying to do better, not because it's good for business, though it is, not because it's good PR, though it is, but because it's right. She paused. The man who taught me that lesson is here today, and I'd like him to say a few words. Marcus walked to the podium. He looked out at the crowd, faces he recognized, and faces he didn't, all of them waiting to hear what he had to say. 5 years ago, he began. I discovered something wrong at my company. I reported it. I followed every rule, every protocol, every chain of command, and I was destroyed for it. He let that sink in. I spent 5 years cleaning hospital floors, 5 years raising my daughter alone, 5 years wondering if anyone would ever believe me. He paused. But I never stopped believing in the truth, even when it cost me everything, even when it seemed like no one was listening. Here's what I've learned: telling the truth is hard. It's risky. It can cost you your job, your reputation, your relationships. The people in power have 100 ways to silence you, and most of the time they win. He looked at Victoria. But not always. Sometimes the truth finds a way. Sometimes the people who tried to bury you end up being the ones who help you dig out. Sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you becomes the foundation for something better. He turned back to the crowd. This fund exists because I refused to be silent. Because Victoria Ashford refused to look away when she finally saw the truth. Because hundreds of people in this room and beyond refuse to accept that powerful people get to decide what's real and what's not. We can't change what happened to me. We can't give back the 5 years I lost. But we can make sure it doesn't happen to the next person who speaks up, and the next, and the next. He stepped back from the podium. That's why we're here. That's why this matters. And that's why I'm not going to stop fighting until every person who tells the truth is protected, supported, and believed. The applause was deafening. That night after the conference ended, Marcus found himself on the roof of the hotel, looking out at the city lights. Victoria found him there. "Good speech," she said, standing beside him. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights twinkle below. "I got an offer today," Marcus said eventually. "From an aerospace firm in California. They want me to head their safety division. 6-figure salary, corner office, the whole thing." Victoria's expression was carefully neutral. "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know." He paused. "A year ago, I would have jumped at it. Getting my old life back, that was all I wanted. And now I'm not sure that's what I want anymore." He turned to face her. "The fund is doing good work, important work, and Maya's happy here. Her friends are here. Her school is here." He paused. "You're here." Victoria's breath caught. "Marcus, I'm not saying anything has to change. I'm not saying I know what this is or what it could be. I'm just saying—" He trailed off, searching for words. "I spent 5 years being angry at you, hating you even. You were the signature on the letter that destroyed my life. I know. But you're also the person who came to my apartment and asked for help. The person who risked everything to expose the truth. The person who gave up her job, her reputation, her identity, because she wanted to make things right." He met her eyes. "I don't know how to reconcile those two people. The villain and the ally. The signature and the partner." He paused. "But I know I want to try." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I've spent a year trying to earn your forgiveness," she finally said. "Trying to prove that I'm not the person who signed that letter. That I can be better. That I can be worthy of the second chance you gave me when you saved my life. And I don't know if I'll ever get there. I don't know if I can ever make up for what happened." Her voice cracked. "But I want to keep trying, for as long as you'll let me." Marcus reached out and took her hand. It was a simple gesture, small, but it carried the weight of 5 years of pain and 1 year of healing. "Then keep trying," he said. "I'll be here." Victoria squeezed his hand. They stood together on the rooftop, looking out at the city. Two people who had been broken by the same system and rebuilt by the same truth. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The scars were still there. The memories still hurt. The 5 years Marcus had lost could never be returned. But this was something. A beginning. A chance. And sometimes that was enough. 6 months later, Marcus bought a house. It wasn't fancy, a modest 3-bedroom in a good school district with a yard and a porch and room for Maya's growing aquarium collection. But it was theirs. Owned, not rented. Permanent, not temporary. On moving day, Maya ran through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing off the bare walls, her voice bouncing back in joyful shrieks. "Daddy, I have my own bathroom. You sure do, baby. And a closet. A big closet. I can fit all my stuff in there. Marcus laughed and caught her mid-run, swinging her up onto his hip. What do you think? He asked. Is this the house from your drawing? Maya looked around, her expression serious. Almost. We still need a dog. One thing at a time, sweetheart. And a fence. And flowers. We'll get there. Maya wrapped her arms around his neck. I like it here, Daddy. It feels like home. Marcus held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling her small heart beating against his chest. It is home, baby. It's our home. His mother arrived with casseroles. Mrs. Patterson arrived with cleaning supplies. And Victoria arrived with a housewarming gift, a framed photo she'd taken at Maya's birthday party. Marcus and Maya laughing together over the aquarium, their faces lit by the glow of the tank. I thought you might want something for the walls, Victoria said, suddenly uncertain. If it's too much, it's perfect. Marcus took the frame and studied the photo. He barely recognized himself, smiling, relaxed, happy. A far cry from the man who'd mopped hospital floors and carried 5 years of grief on his shoulders. You look different, Victoria said, as if reading his thoughts. Good different. I feel different. He hung the photo on the living room wall, the first decoration in their new home. I feel like myself again, or maybe like a new version of myself. Which do you prefer? Marcus thought about it. The new version, I think. The old Marcus would have held on to the anger forever, would have let it poison everything. He paused. The new Marcus has better things to focus on. Maya ran back into the room, dragging Victoria by the hand. Miss Victoria, come see my room. I'm going to paint the walls purple. Victoria let herself be pulled along. Laughing, Marcus watched them go, his daughter, who had taught him that hope was stronger than despair, and the woman who had taught him that people could change if they were brave enough to try. Later that night, after Maya was asleep in her new room, with her fish tank glowing in the corner and her drawings taped to the walls, Marcus sat on the porch and watched the stars. Victoria joined him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. To new beginnings, she said, handing him one. To new beginnings. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets and the distant hum of the highway. I've been thinking, Victoria said eventually. You're always thinking. I've been thinking about the night you saved my life. In the ER. Marcus set down his coffee. What about it? You didn't know who I was. You just saw someone dying and you ran. She paused. I've asked myself 1,000 times what I would have done in your position. If I'd known someone who'd hurt me was dying on a table. What did you decide? I decided that I probably would have hesitated, even just for a second, even knowing it was wrong. She looked at him. But you didn't. You just ran. It's not about who deserves to live, Marcus said quietly. It's about who we choose to be. In that moment, I chose to be the person who helps, even when it hurts. That's what I admire about you. That's what I'm trying to learn. Marcus reached over and took her hand. You're learning, he said. Every day you're learning. Victoria smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. I have a good teacher. They sat together on the porch of Marcus's new home, holding hands, watching the stars. 2 people who had found their way through darkness and emerged into light. Not unchanged, not unscarred, but together. And that was everything. The next morning, Maya found them at the kitchen table eating breakfast together, laughing about something Marcus's mother had said at dinner the night before. She stopped in the doorway, watching them for a moment. Daddy. Yeah, baby. Is Miss Victoria going to be here a lot now? Marcus and Victoria exchanged a glance. Would you like that? Marcus asked carefully. Maya thought about it, her face serious the way only a 9-year-old's could be. Yes, she said finally, because you smile more when she's here, and you deserve to smile. She walked to the table, climbed into her chair, and reached for the cereal. Marcus looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at Marcus. And they both smiled. Because Maya was right. They did deserve to smile. After everything, the betrayal, the loss, the years of struggle, the hard-won redemption, they deserved this moment of simple joy. Not because they'd earned it, not because the world owed them anything, but because they'd chosen it. Chosen hope over despair, truth over silence, forgiveness over rage. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the suffering, not the scars, not the 5 years that could never be returned. What mattered was what came next. What mattered was the choice. Marcus Johnson had chosen to save the woman who ruined him. And in doing so, he had saved himself. That was the truth, the whole truth, the only truth that mattered. And it was more than enough.